Kakadosh Boker or Bekiim Bahalacha 5. This is during Ben HaMetzarim. Ilchot Ben HaMetzarim. This is going to be the preface, which is going to be day 8. Okay, we're talking about now weddings and music during Ben HaMetzarim. Shulchan Aruch writes down, this is in Siman 551, Taf Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Bet. Right, from Rosh Chodesh Av, Mirosh Chodesh Av until after the fast, so you minimize business dealings and erecting the structures using some Mishnichnas Av, Mimatim B'Simcha. We don't get married. We don't enjoy any meal celebrating couples' engagement. Right? That means you could do an engagement but without a meal. Okay? You're not allowed to get married. We do not wed. 1 minute. He says we do not have any celebrating couples' engagements. Right? 1 minute. He says it's permissible, however, for the couple to perform an act of kiddushin without any meal. In fact, this is permissible even on the day of Tisha B'Av itself, since if the groom postpones it, someone else might come and take the bride. It is clear from the Shulchan Aruch that we refrain from celebrating weddings during the first 9 days of Av. There's no restriction against getting married anytime before the month of Av. The Ramah wrote, however, that the custom of Ashkenazic Jews is not to get married from Shiva Sabbat Tammuz until after Tisha B'Av. There are some communities of Sephardic Jews that adopted the custom of the Ashkenazic Jews. Right? זאת אומרת, יש הרבה ספרדים שגם עושים כמו אשכנזים, זאת אומרת שהאיסור זה משבעה עשר בתמוז. יותר מזה, more than that, they refrain from performing kiddushin even, or even a formal engagement agreement during Ben HaMetzarim as well. Look in the Shiurei Knesset Gedolah that he testified that the custom of this community was also they refrain from making any formal engagement. Right? The Taharat HaMayim expresses amazement about this, since this is against halachic rulings of Shulchan Aruch. The Rishon LeZion explained that the rationale of Knesset Gedolah who lived at a time when people had been influenced, right? He says by the famous false Mashiach Shabtai Tzvi. So therefore, they did not observe the fast of Tisha B'Av and another natural fast at all. So to counter the negative influence, the Rabbi in his time decided to demonstrate that it's mamash, it's a period of mourning. So therefore, mamash asur. The Ben Ish Chai wrote that it's proper to refrain from performing the act of kiddushin from Shivzar Sabbat Tammuz. It appears that the custom of Baghdad was to permit it, but he ruled that it's better to refrain from it. The Rishon and Tzion disagree with this ruling, arguing that if the custom was to permit it, so for sure it should be permitted. Again, you do see that the Ben Ish Chai, just like Moroccans also, they were very, very machmirim and all these halachot of the Shloshet HaShavuot because they felt it. So the mamash, it was like the mamash, they went to very, very. Yep. 1 minute. Yes. Yeah. No one. Yeah. He says. Maran and Rishon LeZion disagree with this ruling, right? Arguing that if the custom was to permit it, it should be for sure permitted. After all, we see clearly the Talmud Yerushalmi says it's permitted, and even going to be permitted on Tisha B'Av in itself. This is important for the groom, so no one else will wed the women before he does. And especially important if he does not to fulfill the mitzvah of having children, meaning without Pidiyah, for sure there's no problem. Okay, again, he says the Ben Ish Chai wrote that the custom was not to hold weddings from Shiva Sabbat Tammuz, again, just like the Ashkenazim. Rav Salman Chugi Abudi, right, retorted that this is untrue. He testified, no, that they do get married until Rosh Chodesh Av. Certainly they permitted it. Okay, it's a question. What is the minhag of Baghdad? Well, the Ben Ish Chai for sure said no. Right? One second. The Rishon LeZion explained at great length the importance of upholding the custom of permitting weddings during Ben HaMetzarim. He proved that there's no reason to fear that it's not an auspicious time to begin married life. On the contrary, as long as it's before Rosh Chodesh Av, it's an auspicious time. Meaning, some people, they always look like for the Et Ratzon, for the Zman HaNachon, to the auspicious time. You understand? Some people, they're always looking for that. Whether it's Petichat Hechal and other. So therefore they come and they say, it's not an auspicious time. He says, no. As long as it's before Rosh Chodesh Av, ze beseder gamur. It's considered an auspicious time, right? And therefore he says, especially if they did not do Pidiyah V'Riviyah yet. Furthermore, Maran argued that if everyone would postpone their weddings until after Tisha B'Av, people might be forced to postpone for an unreasonably long time. Because there's a number of wedding halls, and therefore what are you going to do then? And they're all usually they're booked. Tisha B'Av and the high holidays, right? He comes and he says, and if the wedding must be performed for a long time, the groom may be plagued with sinful thoughts while waiting, and it's genuine fear of the generation. Therefore, they should come, right? And they might have physical contact, chas v'shalom. And therefore, he comes and he says that she's a nidah during the time, and therefore he says that before doing terrible sins, right? And even in previous generations, this was a serious problem, as the Yarot Dvash brings down. Meaning that there was a Yarot Dvash that he testified that even in his time there was a problem that Chatam v'Kala, that they used to come and they used to. That's why it's not good to be Chatam v'Kala a long time. Right, immediately once they're engaged, right away, 2-3 months maximum. Right, exactly. 2-3 months maximum, they should already be right. How do you call it? Married. So in light of all of this, the earlier the couple marries, the better things are in every aspect. Anyone who chooses to act stringently in the matter loses far more than what he gains. The rabbi who insists the couple postpone the wedding so that it should be not placed in an unlucky time ends up endangering the couple by leaving them their desires unfulfilled. So the man, אם אתה עכשיו בא ואתה אומר, לא, 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 שיעשו את זה אחר כך. זה מסוכן. למה אתה משאיר אותם ככה בלי, זה מסוכן. Right? The faster the better. There's basically say that even communities that follow the custom of the Ramah should change their custom. Okay, because it leads people to do sin. There's a precedent again in the response of Shelat Yavetz, where Rav Yaakov Emden demanded that the woman in this community cease observing certain stringencies regarding the halachot of nidah. He argued that these stringencies cause many people to sin, and therefore should no longer be observed. And therefore, he says, I wish that many of the customs of Ashkenaz, right, never existed in this country, since they cause many serious breaches in halacha and sometimes bring people to commit, right, sins forbidden by the Torah. Sometimes this happens, by the way, about, some people, they do 5 and 7 and 4 and 7, all the things. Some people, they used to do 7 and 7. So they used to say that the one that's mekel, he's niskar, he gains from it. Or, for example, they wouldn't do nothing. They wouldn't go to the mikveh until 40 days for a boy or 80 days for a girl. Right now, even though that's tumah in the Torah, but it was yemei toar. It wasn't. But again, they made certain mistakes for certain stringencies that it was a problem. Maran concluded that according to this, there's basis to permit Ashkenazic Jews to get married during Minam and Sarim in our era if there's a need for it. There's no problem. There's also indeed the ruling of the Ruch HaShulchan. For Sephardic Jews, it's permitted under any circumstances to do it until Rosh Chodesh Av. Maran wrote that when he became the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, he began permitting weddings during Minam and Sarim until Rosh Chodesh Av. His memoir reads, I heard that some people complain about this matter, saying that the chief rabbi who served in Tel Aviv before did not permit this, and that I have no right to change the custom. This is not true, however. That the fact that the rabbi before me did not do this does not prevent me from doing so. It is a known fact, furthermore, that the Sephardic chief rabbis who served before me felt subordinate to their Ashkenazic counterparts. For example, Rabbi Oziel always bowed to the authority of Rabbi Yitzchak Kook in his quest to unite the various factions amongst the Jews. In fact, he even suggested the Sephardic Jews to accept upon themselves halachic standards of Ashkenazic Jews for shechita and close down the Sephardic shechita houses. He says in this instance, Sir Frank would not allow it to happen. He insisted that even if all the Sephardic rabbis would agree to adopt the standard of Ashkenazi Jews in shechita, I would personally organize an independent Sephardic slaughterhouse. Every community must maintain the traditions that it has honored for countless generations and follow the customs of his fathers. The previous Sephardic chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, Rav Yaakov Moshe Toledano, could never lift his face to argue with Ashkenazic rabbi Rav Isser Yehuda Unterman. Therefore, the offices of the rabbinate, including the division of the wedding licenses, were run according to the standards of the Ashkenazic rabbis. The Sephardic rabbis did not protest this in order to keep the peace. During my tenure, he says, however, I chose not to follow the path of appeasement. Instead, I chose to reestablish, right, strength through the force, right? So he says, no, peace through strength, right? He says, instead, I chose to reestablish the supremacy of the Shulchan Aruch over the community's land of Israel, to establish the same standards in Tel Aviv as are prevalent in the holy city of Yerushalayim. I arranged that the rabbis and individuals in charge of the weddings permit during Minam Atzarim until Rosh Chodesh Av, and this subsequently became the permanent standard in the city, right in the city for Sephardic residents. Anyone who wishes to change this will bear the sin of many. So this is Rav Ovadia, מאוד חזק. הבנת את הכל? אני עכשיו אחזור. באור לציון, Google Translate. Yeah, רק שנייה. באור לציון, he comes and he says, as well, that no true student of Torah would postpone a wedding because of the claim Benim Atzarim is not a auspicious time. In our generation, postponing one could bring people to commit grievous sins, and therefore scheduling a wedding early, these sins are avoided. This reasoning is so compelling that I would consider permitting a wedding on Tisha B'Av itself, if I deemed it pertinent. ממש הוא היה אומר את זה, וממש אפילו בתשעה באב עצמו, he would actually come and permit also a wedding.